Greetings, I am the Red Prometheus, and welcome to my channel. About a month ago, a great tragedy transpired. A public speaker and political influencer, Charlie Kirk, was shot dead during one of his campus discussions. I did not know the man any more than millions of other people who saw him through the internet. I watched his videos and debates, often silently contesting his arguments in my own mind or in comments. Therefore, I will not offer a formal eulogy, or presume to ask for a moment of silence. However, despite my disagreements on many fronts, I never wished him any harm, especially not death. There were far more important things we agreed upon, such as family values. All points of contention, including issues like abortion, would never have merited a deadly response. In the aftermath, and this may sound controversial, it is not really his death that is important, but what comes after. The immediate mocking response, the jubilee and glee of certain people on the internet is unacceptable and condemnable. In the immediate aftermath of the assassination, many speculated on the killer's identity. Immediately, some media networks suggested it was a celebrating fan who negligently discharged a firearm, unfortunately hitting Charlie Kirk. This is an obviously ill-conceived and unfounded suggestion that no serious news outlet should have proposed. Soon enough, videos were released, including one of an older man being escorted while shouting "shoot me." It was quickly determined that he was not the culprit, but most likely a spontaneous voluntary patsy. This effort to mislead did not work. Speculation then turned to the actual killer. As soon as an official warrant was issued, people began debating whether he was left-wing or right-wing, Republican or Democrat. People combed through his biography, looking at how his parents and friends voted. While there were many arguments, most suggesting he was right-wing relied on very weak evidence. In contrast, there were clear left-wing and anti-fascist messages, including a reference to Helldivers and the song Bella Ciao on the bullet casings left at the scene. Any reasonable individual would conclude that he is at least left-wing adjacent, and definitely anti-right-wing. However, sanctity did not stop the waves of speculation. Many theories arose, highlighting suspicions about the footage, such as suggestions of bullet trajectories coming from below, which would mean the convicted assassin who was shooting from the rooftop was not the culprit. Another theory suggested that Charlie Kirk's microphone blew up. Some sought to find hidden messages or communication among his security detail, suggesting they were responsible for signaling the assassination, if not for shooting him themselves. These are interesting theories that perhaps require more investigation. However, far too many seem to be the work of crack theorists, relying on little evidence beyond pixelated footage. Other theories of greater importance suggest that the assassination was orchestrated by some other, bigger party. For example, footage of Charlie Kirk criticizing Israel, one of his biggest sponsors, surfaced, leading to a theory forwarded by Candace Owens that Israel was responsible for the assassination. All these theories are too uncertain and unreliable to determine concretely. While thinking about who might have been behind the assassination, cui bono, who benefited from Charlie Kirk's death, is a valid avenue of investigation, it is too difficult to determine concretely. Since institutional investigations are often unreliable, we cannot be satisfied with official narratives. While they may be content with simply convicting the assassin, prudence suggests digging deeper into the different forces that may have orchestrated this event. In light of this, the only legitimate analysis that yields concrete results is the analysis of the public response. Regardless of the killer's identity or the force behind them, it is far more important to see how people react. And this is the crux of the analysis. The right wing, of course, has been mourning and it's still living with the consequences of his passing. Moderates and people who are moderately left are also distraught. I have seen liberals and moderates express their compassion and disgust with the radical left's jubilee.
I hated Charlie Kirk when I was younger. I was actively attending Black Lives Matter protests when I first became aware of him. I think I was in my mid-20s the first time I heard him speak, and anytime he'd pop up on my feed, I'd get mad because I literally did not want to hear any of his talking points. Like, I was entirely closed off to anything that he said or believed. I had respect for him, not because I agreed with his ideas, because I disagreed with a lot of his ideas until the very end, but because he had conviction and a willingness to talk about the challenging things. There are other debate political talking heads out there that I hear them talking, I'm just like, you don't believe this. I think for better or worse, Charlie usually meant the things that he said, so there weren't questions about Charlie per se, it was just the validity of his ideas.
It is insightful that moderate people on every side recognize this response from the radical left has been wildly inappropriate. The radical left has been creating an environment conducive to violence and political assassinations for a very long time. While it seems that this violence has only recently resulted in high-profile mortalities, we must recognize that this process has been ongoing for the last decade. High-profile streamers like Hassan Piker have openly advocated for violence against political opponents, stating that they should be sliced and diced, gutted on the streets.
I'm sick and tired of it. Left-wingers, liberals, you need to be fucking showing your opponent's guts on there, okay? You need to be gutting them. You need to be shanking these motherfuckers and letting their intestines just ride on stage. What the fuck is this shit, man? Slice them up. Slice them and fucking dice them. What the fuck is this?
It is disgusting hearing that from someone who claims to be a socialist. Another leftist streamer, more so a centrist liberal, definitely not a socialist, has also advocated for violence. He openly said that conservatives should be afraid of going out in public and they should be shot for their beliefs.
You need conservatives to be afraid of getting killed when they go to events so that they look to their leadership to turn down the temperature. The issue is right now, they don't feel like there's any fear. Like, I don't know. It's like memes. It's just memes to everybody, I guess. I don't know, bro. I don't know. I don't care. I'm playing video games.
That's what he said in the wake of the attempt to assassinate Donald Trump at the MAGA rally, which resulted in the death of a father attending the rally with his family. As you can see, they were all too eager to advocate for violence and legitimize it against their political opponents. Now, in light of the actual fruit of the rhetoric, they have tried their best to clean the records with lies, such as Hassan claiming it was a figure of speech, a metaphor, and that his opponents should only be gutted in debates. Any reasonable individual would recognize the blatant lie. He couldn't even stomach looking at the footage of Charlie Kirk dying without recoiling, realizing that just as Kirk's death is possible because of his rhetoric, his own death is now just as likely.
There's a closer footage of Charlie Kirk getting shot in the neck here as well, where you can oh, he's dead. Oh my God, he's definitely dead. Oh my God, I can't believe I just saw that. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, he definitely got shot in the neck. Oh my God. Oh, fuck. Oh yeah, no, that footage. That you do not want to see that. You do not want to see that. You do not want to see that. That footage, the close-up footage shows very clearly, immediately blood pouring out of his jugular. He gets shot in the neck, blood pouring out of his jugular, like an unimaginable amount of blood pouring out of his jugular. There's very, very little chance that he survived that. I don't know if he did, but it doesn't seem like it. Oh my God, that was fucking devastating. Holy shit, I don't know what to say. Oh my Lord. Oh Jesus Christ. Holy fuck, America is so absolutely fucked.
This is called stochastic terrorism, and they have been doing it for the longest time. They had no qualms in rejoicing at the assassination, at the attempts on Donald Trump, and at the death of any conservatives. It must be stated that there are differing figures regarding political crimes, deaths, and other casualties. Some have suggested that conservatives kill far more than leftists by a factor of hundreds, while others have suggested different figures. Regardless of statistics, an intelligent observation of our circumstances makes it easy to determine which side is more violent. There have been high-profile cases of political deaths of people on the left, such as a certain senator who was stabbed. However, that was not a case of right-wing violence. It was a left-wing individual discontent with the senator voting against free education for immigrants. Clearly a left-wing motive. Furthermore, it's not only deaths that matter. Although we also recently had left-wing shooters motivated by demented identity politics, resulting in the deaths of children in a church. There is also the matter of material damage that is just as destructive to overall society. The BLM riots, for example, destroyed disadvantaged poor communities that they were supposed to advocate for. In the wake of these riots, many people died. While some argue that the deaths of some individuals were right-wing motivated, we must remember that if a left-wing individual pulls a gun on the police, their death is the result of their own actions. The BLM riots caused innumerable damage, both in lives and property. To be fair, I will now examine cases of right-wing violence. One of the most often cited is the storming of the Capitol. However, this resulted in little damage other than to property, 0 fatalities, and the rioters were essentially let inside the Capitol, perhaps on purpose. There has been no evidence of significant violence, and the scale was much smaller. It was already condemned by the right from the very beginning, and in the aftermath, as they knew the leftists would endlessly invoke it. And they were right. Another case, which will become relevant later, is the recent incident of a supposed Charlie Kirk fan killing 2 girls for mocking his death. This is truly a tragedy that requires comparable solemnity and compassion. However, it is necessary to coldly calculate and assess the case because it has perhaps been used by leftists without adequate equivalence. The stated motive doesn't follow from the fact it is less reported that this culprit had been stalking the girls for at least 2 months. This suggests the stalker had a previous motive, and Charlie Kirk's death was an excuse or something retroactively applied. It is certainly not a result of Charlie Kirk's supposed misogynistic rhetoric, as many people influenced by and following Charlie Kirk did not commit such acts. This indicates a mentally ill individual, regardless of who he was a fan of. Here we see an attempt to draw a false equivalence. It must also be noted that these girls, tragic as their deaths are not political assassinations, since they were private persons and not public ones like Charlie Kirk. There is a difference between a political motive and a political violence. Even if the pretext was politically motivated, it still doesn't count as political assassination, as these girls were not functioning as political influencers. Only Charlie Kirk was. And while their deaths are tragic, it does not hold the same importance to the political climate, only so far as the leftists are trying to weaponize this sad and tragic case for their partisan aims.
I see this posted on X almost everywhere, usually spread by left-wing people, being confused, bewildered, not understanding why right-wingers aren't talking about this. And I also noticed an interesting pattern. They don't seem to be upset about the death of these 2 girls. Like, they're not trying to, figure out who they were or talk about them. No, it's almost like this news is a hill that the left goes on top of in order to now have the moral high ground.
Many accusations were leveled against Charlie Kirk. He was called a fascist many times, along with being called a misogynist, a racist, Islamophobe, a transphobe, and many others. The accusation of fascism was especially used by the killer himself. Similarly, such accusations were leveled against Donald Trump and motivated the attempts on his life. This accusation of fascism is a grave one, and influencers such as Hassan Piker and Destiny have used it many times to call for violence by their audience against their opponents and the common people who supported them. For the better part of a decade, there has been a constant push to advocate for political violence against the right wing under the pretense of them being fascist. Ever since the Proud Boys, the stated motivation has been to punch a Nazi without reflecting on what it means to be a Nazi or a fascist, or when violence against them is justified. We have no actual Nazis ever since they were defeated in 1945. It remains up to us to discern whether someone deserves death as the Nazis did, or if violence against them constitutes anti-democratic violence and makes for the same crime as the Nazis committed. However, the left does not concern itself with such deliberations, but instead uses this slogan to justify its actions. Why is the left so prone to violence? It seems the American left, in general, has very little capability or means for violence, as they are severely underarmed compared to the right wing, and generally consist of urban individuals of poor physical and mental health. Yet in that lies the foundation of this disproportionate violence. The right wing is confident in themselves. They have the weapons, the physical means, and something worth protecting. For them, rocking the boat and going beyond the immediate protection of their private life is unthinkable. They have family and community to support. However, leftists have severed ties with their own families, often over trivial matters like COVID quarantines and Trump elections. They are only a synthetic, artificial community of like-minded individuals tied together by politics, a found family, of people who are mentally distraught, anxious, depressed, and most importantly, have a persecution complex. We can see this in many calls that suggest that there is some kind of genocide against these individuals. That was the motivation of the shooter who killed children in a church and motivates the better part of the radical left. They feel like they are facing a force much greater than them, and thus the most radical and mentally unstable among them are prone to these outbursts of politically motivated violence. It is exactly like a cornered animal lashing out. But why is this so sudden? On top of this rhetoric finally bearing its bloody fruit, the institutional backing and the permissiveness of society towards their ill ways has been waning. Common people have wised up to the consequences of the radical left's policies, which have destroyed their lives and caused them great misery, and have started to push people with radical leftist views out of institutional power, such as in academia or government institutions. Globally, the leftist hold on power has been slipping, both as hegemonic culture and within institutions. As a result, the state's protection and permissiveness for violent outbursts, such as in riots, which they call mostly peaceful, has been slipping. Now feeling cornered in both their personal lives and in their grander ideology being pushed back against, they have nothing left to lose, and so they lash out. I would also like to talk about Charlie Kirk's culpability. How much was he responsible for the policies he advocated? He wasn't a powerful politician himself, nor was he directly involved in the process of government. However, he was well-funded and an actor spreading his ideology, which should, in a free market of liberal democracy, abide by the free competition of ideas. People have said that he was directly responsible for policies such as the heartbeat law in Texas, a policy that by denying abortion, in cases where mothers would have become condemned to give birth to an infant destined to die immediately after birth, caused great suffering, not just to the mothers, but to their families as a whole. While tragic, and this is one of the reasons why I am completely in favor of abortion, Charlie Kirk did not vote on the policy by himself. This decision was backed by other political representatives and by votes from the people. As such, the culpability and blame are shouldered by the entire constituency. To point out Charlie Kirk as the sole person responsible for that is unfounded and unjustified. Now I wanted to mention a similar case that has been often compared to Charlie Kirk's, Luigi Mangione, who killed an insurance company CEO. Mangione was motivated by the fact that this company had denied insurance claims, causing great suffering to countless people, including Mangione himself, who suffered from spinal issues. This case is much different. The killing is not as much political, although it certainly has such importance. Rather, it was specifically targeted at the person responsible, as a CEO is not a democratically elected sovereign. He operates a company and should be responsible for its consequences. The insurance market is already predatory, and its profit directly relies on denying people the money and help required for fixing their health issues, thereby causing great suffering to many of them. Although it is not justified, it is definitely understandable, even reasonable. This is why it wasn't only the radical left and infatuated women who obviously fall for any violent individual, be it romantically, benevolently inspired, or simply deranged, who supported Mangione. But even on the right, there was support for him and a recognition that his killing was a blow against the elites. The elites in turn sought to downplay and demonize Luigi, which backfired. Of course, the reasonable people do not romanticize him, but there is a recognition that in the end he was an individual fighting the good fight against the exploitative, plutocratic elites. It has been quite a while since the event itself, and many things have happened. However, I found it really important to talk about this matter. The sentiment of the radical left, not just influential streamers but also common people on TikTok or Twitter, is one of rejoicing at the death of Charlie Kirk. Sometime after, there was a rally in Charlie Kirk's memory, where his widowed wife forgave the killer. Of course, in typical American fashion, the whole event was a gaudy and football halftime-styled ordeal rather than solemn. But the widow's act of forgiveness is powerful because it shows that the right is not as violently motivated as the left. It is capable of taking the higher road, of magnanimity. However, it is important to truly understand the importance of what she said. Christian forgiveness, or forgiveness for any reasonable individual, does not absolve the culprit of their crimes. It is a process of letting go of the hate and anger that can destroy a person from the inside. At the same time, we need to recognize that some feelings we felt in the wake of this event are necessary to hold on to. I am speaking as a communist, in solidarity with the entire right wing, moderates and everyone who is a human person who recognizes that political assassination is not only wrong because it undermines our capacity for civil coexistence, but also because it is simply a human tragedy that requires quiet understanding. This feeling of indignation, of disgust by these spiteful people who celebrated his death is something we need to hold on to. In the immediate aftermath of these celebrations, public figures who rejoiced at the death received a backlash, an unprecedented case of right-wing cancellation. A game developer who expressed such sentiments was terminated by his company in light of the critique. Although the individual themselves does not seem remorseful, and double down, changing their online name to Punching Nazis, it is important that these people feel the consequences. Many teachers and professors in academia have also been terminated from their positions for voicing such opinions. It is connected to the earlier point on institutional power. This is exactly what was needed. These people who advocate for violence and then celebrate it, regardless of their political leanings, need to be punished and feel the consequences of their speech. I am not talking about any violent retaliation, but a civil and cold response, without hatred. The right has been the target of cancellation for many years. It is about time the right wing picks up the glove and uses the same weapons that were used against them by their opponents. We see how effective it can be. While free speech was initially an ideal of the right, it was just that, an ideal. One that cost far too much and now even costs lives. As such, it is something we need to abandon and use what is politically effective. As the left says, there is freedom of speech, but not freedom from consequences. Earlier, I said that I disagree with Charlie Kirk, and I can understand why some people might feel relief or even joy at someone dying. While I myself do not feel that way, as I see the profound negative consequences of the tragedy of human loss, I understand why some people may be glad. However, it is simply unbecoming of any civilized person to act in such a way. Here is the distinction. They are entitled to whatever they feel. However, it is a simple lack of manners, civility, and human compassion to share and spread that sentiment online, thereby encouraging similar cases in the future. They would not have faced such a backlash if they simply kept those feelings to themselves. As I said, this is both inhuman and unbecoming. But also, if those kinds of arguments do not appeal to them, then at least from the Machiavellian perspective of optics, their behavior is damaging to their own position. Now I want to restate that the death of Charlie Kirk is a tragedy, and his memory has already been honored in many demonstrations and rallies across the world. The right-wing backlash is finally a sign of vitality and action on the right that has been missing for many years, which had allowed these exact kinds of events to happen. Hopefully this will never happen again, but we need to keep that feeling. Remember the fear for ourselves, our families, and those who hold similar views, or at the least are in conflict with the radical left. We need to remember that they have said that not only public figures such as Charlie Kirk or Trump deserve death, but all of us, from anywhere on the spectrum, right of the radical left position, moderate leftists, centrist, or right-wing of any kind. And we need to act to prevent that from happening, keeping our society civil, so that we may have discussions and public debates such as Charlie Kirk had, without fear of death. And with that thought, I leave you for now. Remember, the chains remain, but the fire spreads. Thank you for listening.